All right, let's introduce our guest. Today we have Chris Smalls. And like I said, Chris Smalls is an organizer, a previous Amazon employee who is at the center of this case against Amazon. And he's been doing a lot of work on the ground. And thank you for coming in, Chris. We really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
It's great to have you here because we also believe that a leader needs to emerge out of labor. I believe that myself too, and I know that everybody here kind of feels the same way. Yeah. And you have been that voice, you have been that face. So thank you for coming on here. We support you 100%.
Thank you. Absolutely. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. So you have highlighted like the weak foundations in the system where we already had a weak system before the pandemic, but the pandemic intensify that times 10, right? And seeing this organizing against Amazon and workers pushing back is obviously what we need more of. And in November of last year, you filed a class action lawsuit against the state of New York, representing all unprotected essential workers during the pandemic of Amazon. And I just want to know, give us a rundown of what's happened since you filed that case.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's actually more than one case that's that's pending against them. The class action lawsuit was my own personal choice with my legal team. Besides the Attorney State General's Office investigation, Letitia James. So the class action lawsuit, I chose to go that route, or once again to represent the mass majority of workers that were infected by COVID-19 throughout the course of the pandemic. And obviously, this discrimination comes into play because of the smear that, they tried to attempt on me, calling me not smart or articulate after firing me a week after protesting. And also Letitia James' lawsuit, which is the whistleblower claims. That's what she's demanding for: my reinstatement, my back pay, emotional distress, and also, just filing against Amazon as a result of what they tried to do, a countersuit. They sued her, I believe it was last Friday, and she countersued on Tuesday.
Yeah. How are you able to get the Attorney General involved and on your side, and what does that mean for your case against Amazon?
Well, I believe when my story broke last year in March, her and Mayor de Blasio called for an investigation. And she held up to her word. I've been working with her office the entire time. So I kind of knew before the public that it was in play. But I guess Amazon poked a sleeping giant when they decided to sue her first. So that's the result of what happened. But I knew that she was working on it the entire time. And she held up to her word.
That's awesome.
Yeah. They preemptively sued her, and then she sued back, which was crazy. But you also recently went to Bessemer, Alabama, to support Amazon workers and these union organizers. The state laws in Alabama, it's in the South, obviously don't favor unionization. So why is Bessemer so important to you? You said that it was the biggest union push against Amazon.
Absolutely. This is probably the most important union vote since the 1930s. In the 1930s, we had the Great Depression, and we saw economic collapse. And then after that, there was a rise in them unions. So you've seen the same thing in 2020. The course of the pandemic, half of the country facing unemployment or eviction, myself included. 15 million people lost health insurance. A lot of them are essential workers. And Alabama will be, if successful, would be the first building for Amazon in its 27 years of existence to be unionized in American history. So this is probably the most important union vote on the table right now. And I think all the attention need to be focused on that. That's why I was there last week, putting in the work that I could, supporting that union, talking to as many workers as I can.
Yeah.
Just trying to get them to vote yes.
Yeah. It's funny you're talking about talking to as many workers as you can. One of my old school favorite movies was Hoffa. And I remember him trying to push like the whole union situation and whatnot, and seeing a lot of other employees that they were trying to convince to come along with them were being frightened. Did you kind of come across the same kind of thing, this whole maybe a pushback from your fellow Amazon workers who are afraid of losing their entire job, in one whole nutshell with this whole pandemic? I mean, I know it's kind of trying times, but they had to be scared. And how did you kind of convince them to come along with this whole, protest?
Well, yeah, they absolutely are intimidated. They seen what happened to me. Obviously, firing me was an intimidation tactic. Firing several activists from Amazon was intimidation tactics. Also, the fact that Amazon throws out a lot of misinformation towards these workers. They tell them that, they're going to be paying a whole bunch of union dues, that they're going to be going on immediate strikes. So once you have these conversations and you tell them otherwise, you tell them the truth and the facts about unions and the pros to having a union and the cons of not having a union, and the fact that I was an Amazon worker for almost 5 years, that relationship right there, it helps sway workers that are on the fence about, whether they should vote yes or no. So that's all I was trying to do. You have to have these conversations. There's no other way you're going to get through the workers unless you have the conversation. And it's not just one, it's over and over and over and over again. So we got to go all the way until the last day, until the ballots close on, I believe it's March 29th.
Nice.
And so you point this out, right? Like many of workers right now in general are overworked, underpaid, and they don't look at political leadership because they're too busy trying to keep their head up. They're too busy trying to feed their families and put food on the table. And how has the U.S. government, though, in your opinion, right, handled this situation with COVID? Would things have been different for workers if they were paid to stay home?
Absolutely. The government should have really took a dive into who's really considered the essential workers. I think in the beginning of the pandemic, they just had like a general list, and they didn't really understand the logistics of what these essential jobs require. And as a result, Amazon workers were compared to the Red Cross, which is just totally false. We're warehouse workers. We're not heroes without a cape. We're being put into the frontline workers with nurses and doctors. And I get it. We're delivering packages and essential goods, but if we're getting sick and dying, how essential are we? So that was the main issue I had with the government calling everybody essential workers when they didn't really decipher who's really essential, who's not. Because now, as a result, you have 800,000 workers for Amazon. There's so many thousands of workers that have tested positive, and there's no social distancing in those warehouses whatsoever. It's impossible. So it's just a breeding ground. As a result, 11 months later, you're still having workers in that facility or any facility across the nation contracting the virus. There's workers that are still dying. I just had to raise money for a family a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
So this is what we're dealing with still. And even the new administration, the Biden administration, needs to do something about who's essential, who's not.
Yeah. Have the conditions in the warehouses changed at all? I mean, has the push to get more safety measures in place done anything? I mean, do we see a difference in what's going on? I know you're saying people are still dying, but are they doing everything they can to help the situation during the pandemic?
So, yeah, I mean, after I obviously was fired, Amazon allegedly spent $4 billion to protect their workers, which they should have been did. But I guess I forced their hand. But it doesn't matter. They can spend all the money they want. If you don't close down the facilities with positive cases, how do you stop the spread? You have to separate the people. The building don't have the virus. It's the people that's bringing it in. Yeah. And they continue to operate as normal and hire on top of that. They hired, almost 200,000 more people. You're cramming 5,000 people, for example, in JFK, 5,000 people go to that building from all 5 boroughs in New York, including New Jersey. So how do you stop the spread of the virus if you're undiagnosed, you can't get a test, or you're asymptomatic? All these factors come into play once again. So it's so many intangibles to deal with that the only thing I was advocating for in the beginning was to close the building down for a minimum 2 weeks for the 14-day incubation period.
Makes sense.
Yeah, but they didn't want to lose those profits.
Yeah,
So because
we're
in a system where it's profits over people, so they're not going to do that. And especially with companies like Amazon, Lyft, Uber, etc., they become so in demand during the pandemic when people are told to stay home and when small businesses are shut down. So you have both workers and the non-corporate sector, the mom and pop shops, the local shops suffering too. Is there a possibility or an alliance going between boycotting Amazon and somehow pushing small businesses and local businesses instead?
Oh yeah. Every demonstration we have, we always call for the boycott, nonstop, every single day. Every platform I get on, I tell them, cancel your Prime, stand in solidarity with the workers, support your mom and pop, because they are going out of business. When I went down to Bessemer, Alabama last week, man, that town is a ghost town. All the small businesses are barred up, closed down. There's no opportunity for these workers down there. All the majors are Dollar General, Walmart, and Amazon. That's it. So imagine, with these under the scrutiny that these workers are under, they have no choice but to either work at Amazon or work for, once again, in a right to work state with a state minimum of $7, and it's not really an option for them. So that's the reality of the situation, probably across America right now. With the pandemic, the economic collapse, the small mom and pop businesses going out forever. Capitalism really exposed itself. Capitalism has thrived, and the working class has suffered. And I think enough is enough of that.
Yeah. Well, you're also organizing for workers against Amazon, but you're also standing in solidarity with unionizing all over. I hear a lot of Republicans always talk about, oh, unions are just as bad now as sometimes as the corporations and stuff like that. How does American strengthen its unions to the degree about the way it was back in the old days? From that Hoffa movie, when I saw it was all about the Teamsters union, when they loved Jimmy Hoffa because he was such a great union. I mean, how do we get back to that? Because a lot of people do point to the unions being corrupt.
Yeah, I know. Unions sometimes have a bad taste. But I believe if the unions started to once again allow workers to form the unions and support the workers, that'll be a way for unions to thrive. Workers form workplace committees, whether they unionize independently or they get a major union to back them. Either way, I think it's a win-win, because workers will have more control in negotiations. They'll feel more involved. They'll feel more comfortable sitting at the table, knowing that there's workers from inside their own internal facilities that's representing the working class. So that's a way. We saw what Google workers did. They formed their own union. So they cut out the middleman. They cut out the NLRB.
Yeah,
that's a possibility. There's several ways that unions could come back. But we also do need the federal government to, have some type of legislature where, unions can form without being busted up the way Amazon is doing right now. So we need Biden to hold up to his campaign promise, which it seems like he's already failing at that. But we need to hold him accountable, saying like, hey, you said that you were raised in a union family, your father, know the story. Now we have a union vote on the table that's important, and he doesn't even want to acknowledge it. So things like that can't happen. That undermines the power of unions. And also, when you talk to union leaders, you got to include ones that are not even in there yet. You have to include ones that want to happen, that want to be formed. So that's just some food for thought for the new administration. We need a voice in the White House.
Yeah, and I'll add it to the new administration, right? On a macro level, we're seeing the vast income inequality hit a breaking point. Government inefficiency, distrust is at an all-time high right now. As an organizer, you're looking at things at a local, on the ground level, but this is also a national workers issue. This is happening all over the country to many workers. Hospitality workers have been screwed by this whole pandemic. Independent contractors and retail workers are all facing the same cruel practices by their employees. In addition, many people have been fired and have no protection. So they have no money. They don't have health care. And meanwhile, we don't have a stimulus yet. There's still not a stimulus in this whole time. Is there a chance right now, seeing at how bad things are, to build a general strike movement out of this emerging workers movement that's happening with against Amazon?
Absolutely, 100%. It's been overdue for a general strike. It's just that we're in the wrong country. We're in the wrong country right now. It's too divisive. I would love to see a nationwide general strike. It's possible. We all get on the same agenda, but that's one issue we have with the left. Everybody focus on their own individual or local issues. It's hard to get the national calls where you can have these big major organizations come together and form something like a general strike. It would be easy. Just think about it. For example, 800,000 Amazon workers nationwide decide to stay home.
Yeah.
That will shake up. That will, just for one day, that will shake up the economy. That will shake up every billionaire in this country. But it's up to us. And I don't know how that's going to be possible. But I know what I've been doing for the last 11 months. I traveled the country, tried to build and tell our stories, get as much support as possible. So possibly one day we'll get enough leverage when I can have 600 to 800,000 workers nationwide. And if Congress say, you're an essential worker, go to work in the middle of a pandemic, we're going to tell them, hell no, we're not going until y'all provide us with the protection and the pay that we deserve.
Yeah.
And that's what it's about. We got to build worker solidarity right now.
I think if we get the truckers, then we really can get if we get the truckers on your side right now and we just stop. We had a guest come on and talk about a wildcat strike. Can you imagine the trucks stopping on the highway right there and just getting out of their truck and walking out and saying, no, we're not doing this? Combine that with the Amazon workers, we can shut this shit down. Chris Smalls, thanks for coming on. You're the leader in labor we've been talking about, and we're glad you came on the show. Tell everybody about your new podcast and where we can find you.
Absolutely, sure. On Twitter at @shut_down Amazon. No surprise there. My organization at TCOEW, the Congress of Essential Workers. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. My podcast, It's a Smalls World, on YouTube every Sunday. Every weekend we have new content coming out.
You're killing me, Smalls. That was an old school saying. You're killing me.
And also, just give us a quick, what is your next step right now with this so we can follow along and watch what you're doing?
Yeah, I was just talking to my team. We're getting ready to have a call tonight. We're probably going to have our 1-year anniversary coming up in Staten Island, JFK, March 30th. Probably going to go back out there and protest. It's only right.
Awesome. Thank you so much for all that you do, Chris. We'll be following along, and we really appreciate you taking things on the ground and pushing this. Best wishes, best of luck. We'll all be there to support you. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chris.
Solidarity. Thank you.
Peace.